with all due respect, James Brown may be the hardest working man in show business, but nobody's got anything on this guy. He's the busiest guy in show business. On any given day, you could be an actor, a musician, a producer, a radio programmer, a political activist. Steven Van Zandt, welcome.
How are you, David?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, we'll talk about The Sopranos a little bit because I know you're here filming some scenes for an episode for the finale, really. But let's talk first about the underground garage project. Tell me a little bit about that. For the people on the planet who don't know about the underground garage project, this has been a thing for viewers for about 4 or 5 years.
Yes, we're in our 5th year. We started a 2-hour syndicated show once a week.
On 200 stations around the world.
We're now in 200 cities and over 1 million listeners. And then that expanded to 2 channels on Sirius Satellite Radio. And now we're finally getting on the road with it. You know, the whole thing is just trying to support these new rock and roll bands who kind of got left out in the cold somehow over these last few years. You can hear new hip hop, you can hear new pop, you can hear new hard rock. You can't hear new rock and roll anywhere. You know?
Why is that? Is it there's not that many radio outlets for it, or they're like demographically programming things in a like very narrow tunnel? It's
a strange phenomenon. We could probably talk all day about it actually, but there's a gap that just developed between the alternative type of stuff that college radio likes and the classic rock, which my stations, are mostly classic rock stations, but they don't play a lot of new stuff. So the traditional rock and roll bands, like for instance, if the Rolling Stones came out today, there's no format in America that could play them.
Right.
Okay? Which is a shock when you think about it,
Right.
And I mean, I found that intolerable to even consider. So we started a format that...
Well, none of those bands from that era would have an outlet for their music today.
No, the Beatles, the Stones, Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band, most of the bands of the 60s and 70s who got famous on their 4th or 5th album. You would never get to a 4th or 5th album, first of all, these days. But there's just no format for it. So we thought, there's something wrong. We go out, we play 60 stadiums, U2 plays 60 stadiums, the Stones play 120 stadiums, or whatever it is, and there's an audience for this, obviously, old and young. And so we decided to satisfy that and serve that very underserved market, by bringing back rock and roll, basically.
Let's talk a little bit about garage bands. When you and Bruce first started hanging out together and playing, this is long before there was an E Street Band. Were you guys a garage band?
Yeah. Everybody was. It was funny, David. What happened was, and people forget this, there were no bands in America before the Beatles. Okay, and they played a variety show called the Ed Sullivan Show. Okay, me and you would remember that.
Yeah. Where did we see the Beatles for the first time?
That's
the Ed Sullivan Show.
February 9th, 1964. Okay, well, I know people find this very funny, but the entire family used to watch the same show.
Everybody sat there because you only got 3 channels anyway, right?
That's right. So 73 million people, which was like, I don't know what the percentage was, like half of the watching audience tuned into the show.
And that's still a barometer by which they measure things. It's like, well, more people watch this show than watch the Beatles the first time, or half the number of people than watch the Beatles and the Ed Sullivan Show.
And Ed Sullivan had also basically broken Elvis Presley the same way, whatever it was, 8 years before.
Right.
So anyway, on February 8th, there wasn't one single rock and roll band in the country. They played February 9th. On February 10th, everybody had a band. Okay, and in the suburbs, we practiced in our garages. That's where the term comes from.
Right.
Okay, and it was a funny time because the whole world changed at that point. Introducing a band, for me, is what got me into music. And as much as I may have loved Elvis Presley or Chuck Berry or Bo Diddley, all the pioneers, as great as they were, a band communicated something different. It communicated friendship and brotherhood and the gang.
There's a camaraderie there.
Camaraderie.
But 4 or 5, 6 guys coming together, taking individual talents and making something out of it.
Exactly right. And that communicated ultimately community.
Right.
And that's what attracted me. I'm like, I want to be part of something.
Did Bruce have that same sensibility that you did?
We all did. And we all started bands around the same time. That's how we became friends, because although everybody had a band in their garage.
Right.
Only about 8 or 10 bands actually got out and made a living.
Right.
You know, in high school. And my band was one, and Bruce's band was one. So
Were you rivals?
no, because there were so few bands.
Right.
If you were in a band, you were friends. You know.
Okay.
And in those days, if you had long hair, you were friends. So if you had long hair and we were in a band, you were best friends. You know, that's what happened with me and Bruce. We just, you know, became friends because you had to be a real freak and a misfit and an outcast to be in a rock and roll band. It wasn't like it was a viable way of making a living, okay? It was like, what are you going to be, the Beatles? You know, are you going to be the Rolling Stones?
If you're not going to be the Beatles, go get a job.
Exactly, you know. And you can't even blame our parents for thinking that way because there was no chance you were going to make it,
Right.
you know, especially in New Jersey. No, you know, people didn't get famous from New Jersey very often, you know.
No, they did, but for all the wrong reasons.
In the post office.
Right.
But anyway, so he was a long shot, and,
Right.
and any of us, let's put it this way, all of the bands that were going with in those days, when they had a choice to do something else with their lives, they took it.
Right.
Okay? Work with their father, go to college. If you had a choice, you took it. The ones that were left, the dregs, that was us. Okay? We had no choice. We had to play rock and roll, and you know, so we stuck with it.
Was there a time back then when you thought, you know what, this is just not going to work? Or did you see like light at the end of each little tunnel and think, I'm going to just keep chasing this dream?
It almost didn't matter because the one nice thing about rock and roll is you're in complete control of your own destiny. Before you're in the music business, I mean, okay?
Right.
You know, so you could put a band together and go down and play your local bar, a local club, without anybody's help, without anybody's involvement, no managers, no lawyers, no nothing, you know? So we always dreamed we would make records and get in the music business, but if we didn't, we didn't. You know, we could still make a living playing locally, and that's what we did. So by the time we got in the music business proper, we were good. We could get people going crazy live because we had to, just to pay the rent.
Right. Well, some of the great bootleg recordings that are out there of Bruce, even before the E Street Band, you're playing the little bars even before the Stone Pony.
Yeah.
And there are these tapes that are circulating, and you can hear that you guys knew what you were doing and you knew how to work an audience.
You know, honestly, we were good. You know, when you go back, you listen to these tapes, I'm like, wow, we were pretty good. But you know, you didn't think about that at the time. All you thought about was being
Where's my $50?
as good as you could be. Where's my $50? You know, can I get a girl tonight? You know, can I get the essentials? You know, and can I rise to the standards set by my '60s heroes? That was the question. Okay, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Who, who are also coming to the Borgata.
Right.
Going to play right in the hotel, by the way.
Yeah, that's got to be the show of the year.
It's going to be amazing.
They're playing stadiums and arenas, and all of a sudden they're coming and playing a 2,000-seater.
A 2,000
Like seeing them in
seater.
your living room.
And that's going to be our November show. I don't want to confuse everybody,
Okay.
but after the Who show in November, the after party is going to be our show in mix with the New York Dolls. And
The Underground Garage?
The Underground Garage,
New York Dolls?
yes. So that'll be our November show. But October is the frat party, romantics, and shadows of the night. But anyway, you know, that's what, you know.
Talk to me a little bit about the evolution of what's become the Jersey Shore sound. How do you define that?
I'm not sure there's any one definition because the 3 or 4, 5 things that came out of it are pretty different. I mean, you know, you had Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band. You had Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes.
You work with both of them.
I worked with both of them.
Yeah.
Then you know, Little Steven and the Disciples of Soul was
Right.
really a different thing. And then Bon Jovi is a different thing. So, you know, the one thing we did do with Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes was redefine what a bar band is. Okay, we introduced horns, the soul music thing with rock and roll. That combination of rock and soul together is what has now become the definition of a bar band. Okay, if you think of a bar band, you think of soul music. You know, you think of Southside Johnny, Asbury Jukes. Well, that's not what a bar band was before Southside Johnny.
They were cover bands, weren't they?
They were cover bands doing the top 40.
Right.
And they were very much looked down upon. Okay, people forget that, but if you were a bar band, that was an insult. Okay, ever since Southside Johnny, people talk about bar bands with a different tone. Graham Parker and the Rumor came out after that. They started calling them a bar band, and they meant it as a compliment. Mink DeVille, Elvis Costello, those people all came after Southside Johnny, and all of a sudden the vibe of, like, you know, primitive garage-like, you know, rock and roll with a little bit of soul music mixed in became the new definition of bar band.
Could we be hearing the beginning of the next project, which would be underground bar bands?
Well, it kind of is. I mean, in a way.
Or is the line blurred between garage bands and bar bands?
Well, now I think bar bands generally would still probably be mostly cover bands in terms of the definition of them. Okay, it may be more soul music oriented, but I think the difference is in the underground garage we concentrate on original material, and you know, bars will probably never embrace that completely. But it's more of a mixture.
But you know what's really interesting. Cover bands are kind of looked down on because all they're doing is performing somebody else's music their own way. And yet, let's see, Rod Stewart, you know, the Great American Songbook, Barry Manilow, songs of the 50s, now songs of the 60s. Eddie Money's coming out with an album of songs he sang with his high school band back in the 60s. Now, what's the difference between a cover band and these guys?
You're right. The first 5 Beatles albums had covers. The first 5 Rolling Stones albums, covers. Mostly,
right?
Okay, and the Kinks, the Yardbirds, you know, you name it, the big bands, and I mean the first, even Van Halen, you know, one of the first hits was a Kinks song. Led Zeppelin, everybody. This is an interesting point. Okay, what happens with the MTV generation is they skipped that development stage of being a bar band. Okay, they went right to writing original material. Okay. In my opinion, the bar band stage is essential before you start writing songs and making records, okay? Why? Because you're playing cover songs of your favorite songs and your standards all of a sudden get raised. So now you start writing songs. Well, what has to happen? Your song has to fit in with those other songs you're doing before and after it. So you better write at a pretty high level, you know what I mean, to match the songs you're covering. You know,
it's kind of like a lot of these younger acts who, you know, become instant stars on American Idol and go from like not playing anywhere live to all of a sudden they're playing arenas. And they haven't worked their way up. They haven't played the 750
so true.
They haven't played a bar. They haven't played a casino nightclub.
Yeah.
And they skip that whole. That's a training ground.
And what happens is it affects your longevity. You know, you're not going to have the depth, you know, to really put together a career that way. It's very, very important, and I encourage every rock and roll band or saloon singer, whatever it is, you know, you want to be a saloon singer, then start singing Tony Bennett and Sinatra and do
in
that.
In a saloon, but trying to find a saloon anymore.
You know what I mean? But whatever, I'm just saying that make sure you put yourself in an environment of greatness, okay? Start there. Don't start with the mediocrity that's on radio and on MTV,
right?
You know, because now you're starting at the lowest possible level, okay? And you're going to go down from there, you know? Start high. Start with the best, you know? And compare yourself to the best and try and rise to the level of the best. And that's what makes you the best. That's why we were so good.
And you know what I've always enjoyed about you is that you've never kind of stereotyped yourself into one type of music. I mean, you've written music for everyone from Nancy Sinatra, I mean, to Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. And just this year, you put together and directed the band that backed up Hank Williams Jr. when he did the new version of All My Rowdy Friends for when Monday Night Football went to ESPN.
It's true. I love Hank Williams Jr., you know, and they ESPN came to me and said, listen, people are starting to forget that Hank Williams Jr. is actually a rocking, you know, fantastic live performer. And he's been doing that so long, he had become like an outline on a blue screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of like this symbolic figure. And they said, you know, Hank wants to rock, man. He wants everybody to know he can rock. I'm like, Don't worry about a thing. I can do that. All right. So
Leave it to little Steven.
so we put together a fantastic band. Joe Perry from Aerosmith, Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, Clarence Clemens from the E Street Band.
Yeah, but any names?
Bootsy Collins from on bass, Little Richard on piano. I'm leaving out half the members of the band, but
They should have called that Little Steven's All-Star Band or something.
It was just a fun group of people, and so we just gave it a little more of a rock and roll arrangement, basically. Same song, but it turned out great.
It's got a little bit more power to it.
Yeah, I'm getting more compliments on that than I don't know what. They're on Sopranos lately. It's amazing, and for the first time this past couple of weeks, people have stopped me on the street talking about that.
Let's talk a little bit before I let you go about The Sopranos. You're here at Borgata filming, like I said at the top of the show, what will it is the final episodes. You went into the cast in 1999, no training as an actor. David Chase saw you, said you had the look, and a lot of people have gotten acting roles because of their look, but you might be the only non-actor to get such a role.
And how about the fact that I look completely different in the show?
Right.
How about that? Right. So it's totally bizarre. I agree with you.
How did you feel when you were approached and they said, "We want you to do this show. You're going to play a mob consigliere"?
I thought they called the wrong number. I'm like, excuse me, this is Little Steven. Remember me, the guitar player? I mean, I'm not an actor. And they said,
but you took to it very naturally.
At that point, it was just perfect timing. Because music was kind of over for me for a minute.
Right.
Right around that time, 1996, 97, I just wasn't getting any, I wasn't relating to it.
Right.
A year or two later, Bruce would put the band back together, and at the same time, I would discover this contemporary garage rock scene, which would then, turn into a radio show, and then turn into these live shows we're doing at the Borgata. Yeah. But that hadn't happened yet.
Right.
So I thought, you know what? Maybe it's over. Maybe now it's time to try something else, so I'll be an actor, And I went down there. I just felt, I've always loved the gangster genre, first of all. And I'd read all the books through the years.
You're from Jersey. How can you not?
You kind of grow up with a little bit, you do. You're not sure whether they're real guys or wannabes, but guess what? It doesn't matter.
Right.
They're equally scary, I got the job, and I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with this particular show, these writers, my fellow actors on the show, the greatest group of people ever. David Chase, just the most brilliant guy. As many accolades as he has, and the awards he's won. I can't tell you what a joy it is to just have a conversation with this guy. Right. The way his mind works, it is just different. He's different, but yet he's New Jersey. You know, and so we obviously relate to each other.
He's got it dialed. He has New Jersey dialed in.
He really does on every level because he loves the music and that too. He's the one who picks the music for the show.
Do you find that people come up to you and expect you to be Dante?
No, that's the nice thing.
Oh, that's the nice thing because they can separate.
Getting famous as a guitar player with the E Street Band first, and then as Little Steven, the artist, getting well known that way also, it's pretty solid, in people's minds. And I transformed myself as much as I possibly could. The hair. I literally, thank you.
You were a chameleon.
Thank you, Robert De Niro. But I gained 50 pounds. I was always thin my whole life, very thin. And so I gained all this weight for the role because I figured music is over. Then, of course, I had to lose the weight for the tour.
What about when the series ends?
Yeah, but at that time, I thought it's kind of over. Let me transform myself so I'm unrecognizable. I don't want people looking at me, looking at Sopranos and saying, I saw him playing Cleveland. I don't want that. I don't want to be a distraction. I wanted to fit in. And so I think I really did a good job with that, I just fell in love with it. I really did.
The series ends early next year. Will you continue to pursue an acting career, or is this a one and done?
I don't know. Tell you the truth, I don't know. First of all, I fired every agent in Hollywood, so it's unlikely that anybody could even find me if they wanted to.
They'll find you.
And secondly, I'm kind of busy. I mean, I'm really busy with this whole, with the Underground Garage thing,
Right.
you know? I mean, we have 3 tours out this year. I want to do 6 or 8 next year. I want to do a TV show. You know, we want to try and keep expanding this rebirth of rock and roll and allow this next generation of kids to actually hear what rock and roll is and was. So that's a full-time job, honestly. Look, if some director comes to me or a script comes my way and I feel I could contribute to it, I'm going to consider it. But who knows? This may be the only thing I ever do, and you know what? That's okay with me.
Not a bad way to be remembered as an actor.
That's it.
Steven Van Zandt, a pleasure to see you.
Hey, thank you, David.
Look forward to
Good
seeing you more in Atlantic City.
Thanks.